This is your Sound Off Extra review for WWE Hell in a Cell 2018 from San Antonio, Texas. I am the Solomonster. Hit the thumbs up to like this video and leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about tonight's Hell in a Cell event, which is now in the books. Overall, I thought it was an excellent show. Actually, I thought it was one of the best WWE pay-per-views all year, marred only by a terrible finish to the main event. We now have two uncrowned champions off of two separate ref botches, one planned and the other one very much not planned. Samoa Joe got AJ Styles in their match to tap out, but the referee did not see the tap out. AJ won. That now leads to a rematch next month in Australia. In the main event, though, Mick Foley, and God bless Mick Foley. Mick Foley, I thought, looked great tonight. He slimmed down a lot. You know, he's been doing the DDP yoga. And he's had a hip replacement and a knee replacement. And when you're a referee, you've got to bend down, you've got to get up and bend down and get up. And I thought he was moving around great, better than he has in years. That being said, there was a very cringeworthy moment here where an early near fall in the main event where Foley accidentally counted 3 for Braun Strowman. Roman Reigns was supposed to get his shoulder up. I don't know if Foley counted fast or if Roman was just too slow, probably a little bit of both. But Roman got his shoulder up after the very obvious 3 count. I'm sure that will headline the next Botchamania video. And so Samoa Joe is the uncrowned WWE Champion in storyline, and Braun Strowman is the uncrowned Universal Champion. But with the main event ending in a draw, yes, a Hell in a Cell match to close out the show ended with no winner. And as such, Braun Strowman became the 4th man in history to cash in his Money in the Bank contract and fail. Kind of lost in all of this. This was a Money in the Bank contract cash-in, and even though he didn't, I guess, technically lose, he didn't get pinned by Roman Reigns, he also did not win the championship, which constitutes failure. So we'll get into this whole show here. The Cell is a new blood red color. I talked about this on the podcast earlier today. They were live streaming the construction of the Cell yesterday. Everybody was freaking out about the new red color. I don't think it looks particularly good television-wise, but I don't really care about the color of the Cell. As I said earlier, this company's got a lot of other problems more important than the color of the Cell. So we'll start with the kickoff show here. The New Day taking on Rusev and Aiden English for the Smackdown Tag Team Championship. This match was on the main card. Got bumped off to the pre-show a couple days ago. Good match. Big E launched Kofi Kingston over the top rope as he was coming down onto Rusev. Rusev caught him with a Machka kick, while Aiden English at the same time gave Big E a DDT on the apron. Rusev rolled Kofi into the ring, had the match seemingly won, but Aiden English made the blind tag, hit a top rope splash for a near fall. Then English put Kofi in the accolade, and when Big E tried to make the save, Rusev cut him off with a Machka kick. And it was at that moment that you thought they might be switching these titles. And people were, rising to their feet, and they were starting to go a little crazy, but Kofi escaped the hold, and then he sidestepped a charging Rusev, sent him out to the floor. Trouble in Paradise kick to Aiden English for the win. A miscommunication costs Rusev Day the titles. New Day retain. And as I suspected, all was not going to be well for very long in Rusev Day land. And I suspect that this is the beginning of the end of this team now. It's only a matter of time. The pay-per-view portion opened with the first of 2 Hell in a Cell matches. Jeff Hardy taking on Randy Orton. The good news is that Jeff did not dive off the top of the cell to his doom. He did not kill himself here in this match, although I guess he almost did at the end. But the bad news, he still did crash and burn, and it cost him a win here in this match. This was more violent than most WWE matches. It was a hell of a lot more violent than I expected it to be. Last year, the only thing I can compare it to is last year was that great Hell in a Cell match with the New Day and the Usos, which I think belongs on anyone's top 10 list of great Hell in a Cell matches in history. You can quibble about where in the top 10 it ranks, but I thought that tag team match last year was fantastic. And there were, kendo stick shots and handcuffs introduced. Yeah, there was more brutality in that match, I think, than we're used to seeing here these days. here we had tables and we had ladders and chairs. Hardy beat on Orton's back with a chair so hard, he sliced open Orton's back with it. Orton was bleeding on the back. He had part of his flesh ripped off of his leg. You know, the flesh was literally hanging off his leg. He was bleeding from the leg, the arm, the back. The sickest spot was when Randy Orton discovered a toolbox underneath the ring. He decided to go into full Bob the Builder mode. He grabbed a screwdriver, and I'm not talking about a vodka OJ. He took the screwdriver, he put it through the hole in Jeff's earlobe, and proceeded to twist the screwdriver. It looked nauseating. I think that spot's going to haunt my dreams for a while. Finish came when Jeff had Orton laid out on a table. He climbed a giant ladder, and instead of diving off, which he was about to do, he looked up and said, "You know what? I'm not all that far from the roof of this cage. So why don't I just go ahead and climb all the way up?" Which is what he did. And once he got up there, he grabbed hold of one of the high beams on the roof of the cell, and he started to swing back and forth. So much so that I thought he was going to try some kind of sick lucha flip, but instead he just fell. Orton rolled off the table, and Jeff crashed and burned through the table. And I watched this, and it was a cool spot, and actually probably a lot safer than what I was fearing Jeff Hardy might do. But I could not help but watch this and just think to myself, what a missed opportunity for an RKO. That would have been the biggest RKO of all time. But anyway, the referee started freaking out. He called for EMTs to come in. He called for, raise the cell. Randy Orton saw this, and he demanded that the referee count the fall. He's like, I want to win. And so he got the 3 count. Randy Orton wins. Hardy did a stretcher job out of the arena. And later on, they were giving us updates from the hospital. He was bleeding and having abdominal issues. So it sounds like Jeff will be out for a while. I thought this was an excellent match, an excellent opener. More violent than I expected it to be, which is always a plus. When you have Hell in a Cell should be a bloody, violent match. And that's what we got here. Now, this did not need to be inside Hell in a Cell, but they did justice to the giant red monstrosity, I thought. And best of all, Jeff Hardy is still alive. I was genuinely worried about that going in. Charlotte and Becky Lynch, for the Smackdown Women's Championship, security confiscated someone's Boo the Woo sign. So I don't know how widespread that was in the building, but there was at least one person with a negative Charlotte sign that really, there was no profanity on it or anything like that. And security actually confiscated a sign that said Boo the Woo, which is just completely ridiculous. And that's coming from WWE. And so I just think that's just stupid. Lots of cheers for Becky. Boos for Charlotte. Well, a mixed reaction. More boos than cheers, I thought, for Charlotte during the ring introductions. Then later on, we had loud chants of "Let's go, Becky." Becky worked over Charlotte's arm throughout the match. Must have tried to slap that disarmer on her at least 10 times. Charlotte missed a moonsault. Becky went for another armbar, but Charlotte muscled her up into a powerbomb for a near fall. It all built to a spear attempt by Charlotte, but when she went for the spear, Becky rolled through and scored what I would consider to be the shock pin for the win. Or, and not that it was shocking that they would do the title change here, but I guess just the way they did it kind of came out of nowhere. So Becky wins. Becky Lynch is your new SmackDown Women's Champion for the second time. A huge babyface reaction for the win. Charlotte cried, of course, because she always does. And when she got up, she walked over to Becky and she extended her hand out of respect. And Becky, instead of shaking her hand, said, "You're not going to steal my moment away from me." And she raised her title high up in the air and she walked out. Now, for those of you who think, well, they've heard the fans and they've decided to, position Becky now going forward as the babyface, Corey Graves on commentary, I think it's worth noting, after she snubbed Charlotte and left, Corey on commentary called her actions disrespectful. He sounded disgusted with what Becky had done. And that when the announcers go into this mode, they're being given their marching orders. And so I heard that and I thought to myself, well, that doesn't sound like they're positioning Becky to be a babyface. It sure sounds like she's still a heel. at least in their eyes. But I'm very happy to see Becky win the championship. A rematch, I'm sure, is going to take place in Australia on October 6th, and again, probably again at the Evolution pay-per-view at the end of the month. But so this is far from over. Charlotte could very well get the belt back next month. But for now, they made the right move. I thought this match was very good. Sad tweet, by the way. A rare sad tweet here during a pay-per-view review. I usually reserve these for the weekly podcast. But sad tweet goes to Goldust on Twitter. Dustin Rhodes, at Goldust, who said, after this match was over, he said, "Now hopefully the Smarks will shut their pie holes. They don't understand how a story works. Congrats, Becky Lynch. Well deserved." And when a fan had the gall to chime in with what they thought might have made for a better story, he responded with, "Thanks for your 2 cents, but unfortunately for you, it ain't worth a thin dime." Hell of a way to respect your audience there. I want you people to remember that the next time you hear Stephanie McMahon or Goldust or anybody else in this company tell you that your voice matters. You express an opinion, and apparently it's not worth a thin dime, according to Goldust. Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre against Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose for the Raw Tag Team titles. 23 minutes this match went. This was excellent. Rollins was in there a very long time. They kept teasing the hot tag to Ambrose. Finally, when he made it, Ziggler distracted the referee long enough where the referee did not see the tag. And Ambrose just flipped out when the referee said he had to get out of the ring. People were very upset about this. This was great. This was classic, great, old school tag team pro wrestling. Great heat for all of this. When he did make the tag, Ambrose came in, he ran wild. Rollins went for a suicide dive. Ziggler and McIntyre, they were both outside. They caught him on the dive. But then before they could do anything with him, Ambrose hit a dive of his own, wiped everybody out. We had Ziggler hitting the zigzag for a close near fall. Rollins kicked out. McIntyre got the tag. He went for the Claymore kick. Rollins countered with a super kick. And then he went up to the top rope, hit a frog splash, big frog splash by Seth Rollins. For another near fall. Ambrose gets the tag. And so we have Ambrose and Rollins now, right? They're going up top with Drew McIntyre. And Ziggler yanks Rollins down, and yeah, they both fall out of the ring. Ambrose goes for dirty deeds on McIntyre. Rollins makes the blind tag. That's important to note. Seth Rollins makes a blind tag. And so he takes Dolph Ziggler up top, hits a superplex, and as he rolls through to go for the Falcon Arrow, McIntyre comes in. He hits the Claymore kick just before Rollins can hit the Falcon Arrow. And Ziggler, I think he fell basically on top of Rollins, and he got the pin. So, my words don't do it justice. It was a hot sequence. I thought it was a very clever, very cool finish to the match. Ziggler and McIntyre retain, and I think it's also important to note here that, again, it was the blind tag from Rollins that led to the loss. And I think that's important because it might not sit too well with Dean Ambrose. For a lot of you, myself included, who think and hope that at some point this is leading to, an Ambrose heel turn, the Shield reunion probably isn't long for this world. This may have been a little seed that was planted because it would be very easy for Ambrose to hold Rollins responsible for losing this match. But the people here, they bought into every near fall. They were hot for everything in this match. I love the finish. It was a clean finish. Great match. I can't say enough good things about it. Then we had AJ Styles and Samoa Joe for the WWE Championship. There was nothing wrong technically with the match that they had. They had a good match. Just very little heat. Crowd was pretty quiet throughout most of it. They did get into it, though, in the last few minutes, so I guess in a lot of ways it was kind of like their SummerSlam match. I feel like their SummerSlam match followed the same pattern, where people were kind of quiet for it, not a whole lot going on, and then it sort of builds a little bit more in the final minutes. Joe turned AJ inside out 2 different times on a pair of just wicked lariats. These were lariats that I think Stan Hansen would be proud of. I believe that last one is what busted open AJ's mouth because he was bleeding from the mouth. Joe went for a muscle buster, which they identified. They called the muscle buster attempt, but AJ slipped out. He went for a Styles Clash. Joe kicked him in the head to escape. AJ went for the phenomenal forearm. Joe sidestepped him and put him in the choke. And when he took him down, AJ rolled through. So this was the Bret Hart-Roddy Piper finish from WrestleMania 8 that they recycled again with Bret Hart and Steve Austin at WrestleMania, or I should say Survivor Series in 96, where AJ rolls through and Joe's shoulders are trapped. And so AJ gets the pin and he wins the match. Now, Joe reacted like he thought he had won the championship until the ring announcer said, "And still." And then Joe freaked out. He was pleading to the referee. He was pleading to the announcers, to anybody who would listen, that AJ tapped out. It didn't look like he tapped out. On the first replay, there was no evidence of a tap out. But then they had a replay with a different camera angle that clearly showed AJ Styles tapping out at the very last second before the 3 count. So, justice for Joe. He'll get his rematch in Australia next month. It'll be no count out, no disqualification. There must be a winner as per a segment that aired later in the show when Joe was yelling at Paige, and Paige made the match official. But honestly, at this point, he didn't win the championship last month. He didn't win the championship here. This just is eerily similar to what we saw with AJ and Shinsuke Nakamura earlier this year. And those guys went on to have 4 or 5 different matches. And at no point did Nakamura ever win the WWE Championship. And I think we're at that point where I don't believe, after tonight, I don't believe Joe is getting the title. I don't think he's ever winning that championship. And that's a shame, because I'd like to see him have a run with it. But maybe Joe will become even more psychotic as a result, and he'll, kidnap Wendy. Maybe a giant van will pull up in front of the Styles home and take her away, and then when she reappears, she'll have a giant tattoo on her face, and she'll be walking around carrying a machete. We'll see how many of you get that reference. Miz and Maurice against Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella. I thought this was the weakest, up until the main event maybe, but possibly even including the main event, because the Brock run-in at least was cool before I realized where this was going. I thought this was the weakest match on the show up to this point. Which doesn't mean it was bad, because this was really a strong show from top to bottom. But this match was not better than anything that came before it. Bryan missed a diving headbutt at one point. Not sure that he needs to still be doing that move, but he knows his body better than I do, so hopefully he knows what he's doing. Brie Bella actually got a hot tag in this match. Bryan gave Brie Bella, his wife, the hot tag here in this match. Maurice would not get in the ring with her, so Miz got in, and Brie decided to beat him up. She's attacking him and punching him, and I don't think that's fair. I think he should be allowed to fight back. But instead, Brie did a baseball slide through his legs and hit Maurice. I thought Brie looked a lot better, just ring-wise. I thought she looked a lot better in this match than she did a few weeks ago when she nearly killed herself on that botched suicide dive. Thankfully, no dives here in this match. Miz got cut open somehow on the forehead. A lot of blood on the show tonight. At least 3 different matches, by my count. So maybe that red cage, man. Maybe that red cage was a bad omen. Bryan and Brie did stereo yes kicks to Miz and Maurice. Before they could hit the final kick, though, the heels rolled out of the ring. Brie went out after Maurice, threw her back inside. Brie rolled her up, but then Maurice countered with a roll-up of her own for the win. Another roll-up finish here on this show. What is that, number 2? 3? When they do these roll-up finishes, they tend to go a little nutty with them. I think we've had pay-per-views this year that have had 3 or 4 different roll-up finishes on the show, which is just unacceptable. But anyway, that's 2 straight losses now to The Miz for Daniel Bryan going back to SummerSlam. He needs to win now. When they have that match in Australia, he needs to win. Otherwise, I don't know what to say. What a loser, I guess, is what I would say. Ronda Rousey and Alexa Bliss for the Raw Women's Championship. This was the longest singles match of Ronda's very short career, and the most selling that she had to do in a single match. She had to sell for Little Miss Bliss, but they were smart. I will say WWE was smart. They set the angle up on Raw last week with the injured ribs to at least, give a reason why Ronda would be selling for someone like Alexa Bliss. Alexa worked over the ribs. She had Alicia Fox and Mickie James in her corner. Ronda had Natty. Alexa got a little too cocky, and she pissed off Ronda, which is something that you don't do. And Ronda made a comeback. She hit the spinning Samoan slam of hers, and she won with the armbar. Alexa tapped out immediately. I had a lot of people on my timeline crapping on the match, talking about how awful Ronda was. I didn't think she was awful at all. I mean, I could see it being tough to buy into her selling for Alexa Bliss for 75% of the match. That was tough to buy, but I thought Ronda sold well. I thought she made a hot comeback and really didn't do anything to embarrass herself. So I'm not really sure where all the hate is coming from. I will say, for all the women in this company who use arm bars in their matches, Becky Lynch being one, we just saw Deonna Purrazzo last week on the Mae Young Classic, and she is under contract now to WWE. She's got a Fujiwara armbar as her finish. There may be one other one I'm not thinking of at the moment. But for all the other women who I've seen do arm bars here in this company recently, it's amazing to me that the woman who legitimately used to break people's arms in combat sports with an armbar has by far the worst looking armbar in the entire company. And for everyone who's going to say, well, what do you want her to do? You want her to really break people's arms? No, I want her to learn how to do it safely so that it looks good. But obviously I don't want her to hurt anybody with it. I don't remember it looking bad when she did it to Stephanie at WrestleMania. I thought it looked pretty good then. It's almost like she's gotten more sloppy with it over time. So that's my only critique here. Otherwise, I thought Ronda looked good. I don't know where all the other hate is coming from. And then we had the main event. Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman for the Universal Championship with Mick Foley as the special guest referee inside the Hell in a Cell. This was Braun Strowman's Money in the Bank cash-in. I mentioned earlier Mick Foley accidentally counting 3 for Braun at one point. Braun was rightfully upset by this, as well he should be. This was what you would expect, I guess, from a Roman Reigns match, and people are gonna jump on me for that now. But when you watch a Roman Reigns match, you expect 5 gazillion Superman punches. It's like watching a Brock Lesnar match. What do you expect? 200 suplexes. Everybody has their thing. So you had Superman punch after Superman punch. Braun hit a power slam. Roman kicked out of that. There was a table spot where Roman speared Braun through a table that was stacked up in the corner. Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre came down. They were demanding the referee open the door to the cell. He would not. Seth Rollins came out. Dean Ambrose came out. All of this led to all 4 men climbing the cage up onto the roof of the cell. And there was this extended sequence where Dolph Ziggler and Seth Rollins were fighting on top of the Hell in a Cell. McIntyre got up there. Eventually, Ambrose came up there with a kendo stick. He was beating the hell out of everybody. And so, meanwhile, Roman and Braun are inside the cage. They're down on the ground. They're not doing anything. They're just sort of catching their breath, I guess. Looking up, watching this impromptu match on top of the cell. Ziggler went to go leave. He's very slowly climbing back down the cage. Rollins goes after him. And, once they got their footing on one of the side panels, they had climbed down a few feet. You could see this bump coming from a mile away. The announce desks had already been cleaned off. And sure enough, they're ramming each other's heads into the side of the cage. And after 3 or 4 times, they both go flying off the side at the same time. Rollins crashed through the American announce table, and Ziggler crashed through what I believe was the Spanish announce table. So that was, that was a cool spot. Not one that we, haven't seen before, but they took the big bump there. And then Brock Lesnar's music hit. Now, there were rumors that Brock was in the building, and they weren't really making any attempt to hide him. It wasn't like sometimes they smuggle these guys in, they put him on a bus. Apparently, he was backstage the whole night. People saw him, so they knew he was there. So Lesnar's music hit. That was a nice little surprise for the people who didn't know. He came out with Paul Heyman. He's now sporting, you could tell he's getting ready to fight again because he's sporting his MMA beard that he had many years ago in UFC. So he comes down. Heyman tells the referee, open the door. Take out your key, open the door. And the referee says, no, I can't do that. And so Brock got tired of waiting, and he kicked down the door. This was very much like Kane coming out in '97 in the first Hell in a Cell, where he ripped the door off the hinges. In this case, Brock kicked the door off the hinges. And not only that, not only did he kick the door off the hinges, when he pushed the door in, he kind of leaned the door up against the ring, and he used the door as a ramp. He, literally just walked up the door and jumped over the top rope and into the ring. And I thought, that was kind of cool. Unfortunately, that was the last cool part of this match. He came in, he picked up various broken pieces of table. He was hitting Roman with it. He was hitting Braun with it. Then he picked up Braun. He hit a very weak-looking F5. He picked up Roman. He hit an F5 on Roman onto Braun. And so now both guys are down. Meanwhile, Paul Heyman had maced poor Mick Foley in the face. I don't know what he did to deserve that. But yeah, he maced Foley. So Foley is outside the cell. He's in the aisleway, writhing on the ground. After the F5s, Brock left the cell and walked to the back. And another referee came out, and he saw all the carnage and all the mayhem, and he decided to wave off the Hell in a Cell match. He said neither man can continue. And that's how they went off the air. No winner. No real finish here to this match. Both guys got hit with F5s that didn't look particularly devastating after being hit by some pieces of table. And that's how you end a Hell in a Cell match. Both men are unable to continue. Now, when I did my prediction video earlier, I said in my prediction video that I don't know that this match is going to go to a finish. In fact, I could very easily see this match having a non-finish. Some kind of big gimmick spot. Maybe they take some kind of big fall. Maybe not off the top of the cage, but something big happens and both guys are left for dead. That's basically what happened here, but only without the big spot to explain why both guys couldn't make it back to their feet. That's the one thing I absolutely hated about this. Had they done some kind of big, elaborate spot where they got out of the cell and they brawled elsewhere and they took a spill or something happened, the friggin' cage fell on them, I don't know. At least you could have explained it. In this case, all you're left wondering is, why did they call this match off? What was done to these two men that was so appallingly devastating that they could not continue this match? It's a stupid way to end the show. This finish was terrible. Awful. And because he did not win the championship, Strowman fails to cash in Money in the Bank. He now joins John Cena, Damien Sandow, and Baron Corbin in Infamy. And like I said, I like the visual of Lesnar coming out to kick down the door and using it as a ramp. But other than that, I thought this ending absolutely sucked. And I thought, I've seen Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns have some really good matches together going back to last year. They really have. And I can honestly tell you that this was the worst of all of the matches that I've ever seen the two of them have. Not only that, it was one of the worst Hell in a Cell matches that I can remember. I'm sure it's not the worst. It definitely was not as bad as Undertaker and Bossman at WrestleMania 15, or Bossman and Al Snow later that year with the Dogs. But this will go down if you rank all of the Hell in a Cell matches ever done. This one is way down on that list. And it's a shame because I had high hopes that these two would have another good match, would have another good outing, and they had some kind of, whether it be a title change or just some kind of a unique finish planned. I guess you could argue in some ways it was unique. Unfortunately, it was unique in a bad way. You cannot end a Hell in a Cell match in a pay-per-view that way. I'm sorry. You just can't do that. If you're going to do it, you better come up with something a hell of a lot better than Brock Lesnar giving him a couple of F5s. After they had already been laying there for 10 minutes watching all the other four guys on top of the cell brawling. So it just felt like they had to sort of pad the match with all of this interference and all of these gimmicks when you could have just put the two of them in there and just, let them go at it and have a really good match. Like pretty much all the other matches on this show. It's a shame that a show this good had to end on a sour note. Let's take a look at the poll. The Twitter poll, if you want to vote, the poll is going to be up for a few more days. If you want to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, we are already at 2,000 votes. Wow. Already 2,000 votes in. 65% of you said thumbs up. 35% of you voted thumbs down. So pretty overwhelmingly a positive response to this show. One of the best shows they've put on all year. With an absolutely inexcusable finish, I thought here. Now, what's interesting is that Brock Lesnar is back. And so now he factors into you would think anyway, he factors into the championship picture going forward. He's going to want his Universal title rematch. It does create some more intrigue here in terms of where he fits into the equation. Is he going to be at the Australia show? Are they going to do a triple threat match? It would seem to me that you have to do some form of a multi-man match with all 3 men at some point. That would be the most logical place, I think, for it. So we'll see. I don't know that too many people expected Brock to be back this soon. I'm sure he is, planning to fight sometime early next year. What kind of deal does he have with WWE? Did he secretly sign an extension? Is he going to stick around for, one more match? Is he going to be around for another year? We don't know. I'm sure more news will come out in the days to come on that. And as tired as I was of seeing Brock as the Universal Champion, I thought you got to get that title off him somehow, some way. I do still believe, and I know a lot of people don't, they're sick of seeing him, but I think tonight was an example. I believe there is still value in Brock Lesnar. I believe there is value in keeping him around, even if you don't put the championship on him. The guy still has something about him. There's still this, aura about him. There's still guys he has not wrestled with before. There is still, I think, value in keeping him around. So I think it's a smart move if that's what they've done. And it certainly creates interest now going into Raw tomorrow night, a show that sorely needs the interest. If any of you listened to the full podcast I did this morning, you know my thoughts on the state of Monday Night Raw, and it is not good at the moment. This is a very difficult time to sit through that television show every single week. And what they need to be doing is creating more stories that are interesting and are intriguing to the audience, keep people wanting to tune in to the show. I'm sure people will tune in at the beginning of the show to see what's going on with Brock. But the state of Monday Night Raw right now is I would say almost as bad as it's ever been, frankly. Just in terms of how unbelievably difficult it is to sit through that show week in and week out. One good pay-per-view does not make up for all of that. It's a positive sign that they could put on a show like this. I'd like to see them do that every month. But just in terms of the week-to-week television, it's pretty bad right now. And I think keeping somebody like Brock around, if they could possibly get him on TV a little bit more often, would go a long way, I think, to create more interest in that show. Anyway, my thanks to Salrex, as always, for the great artwork. Follow me on Twitter at Solomonster. Vote in the Hell in a Cell poll. Give this video a thumbs up. Also, leave a comment down below. What did you think of the pay-per-view? Did you not like the pay-per-view? Did you think the main event finish was great? I'm sure there's some people who probably think it was. Anyway, leave your feedback down below. And of course, as always, check out the full podcast of the Solomonster Sounds Off. It drops each and every Sunday. You can find it pretty much everywhere: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. Check out all the other clips here on the channel. I'll be back with a review for the Super Showdown show coming up in Australia. We'll have a review up on the YouTube channel for that in a few weeks, and also the Evolution pay-per-view coming up at the end of October. And so until next time, be well, stay safe, have yourselves a great week, and I will see you back here on the channel for more content very soon. Until then, take care, guys.